Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erica. Welcome back to my channel. It's been a hot minute since I posted a YouTube video. I was on vacation and then I've had 2 back-to-back weekends of weddings, but I am back with a new YouTube video. I was traveling in Europe. We went to Paris, Barcelona, Mallorca, and Lisbon. I wanted to make a little travel guide video for Mallorca. Trying to prepare for the trip, I was looking at a lot of other videos and found them really helpful, so I wanted to just share my experience. We were there at the end of June and we stayed for 4 nights. We stayed in Soller, I think that's how you say it. It's S-O-L-L-E-R, which is one of the mountain towns on the west side of the island. It's a little bit more north. The most popular mountain towns are Soller, Valdemosa, and Dea. Dea I think is probably the most expensive out of all of them because it has the craziest views. It is literally built right into a mountain. They're all not too far from each other, about 30 or 45 minutes. So we flew from Barcelona to Mallorca, which was maybe an hour flight. It was very, very short. The Palma airport is really nice. We rented a car, so we got our rental car and then drove to Soller. That I think was about an hour drive. I want to preface this as we did not, I think, have a single reservation for this trip, and so other than the hotel and the car, we didn't have any dinners planned or any of our activities planned out, so we kind of just played it by ear. If you want to be more precise and have certain things scheduled, because there are some super famous restaurants that I'm sure require months in advance reservations, but we went to some amazing places with little to no notice and got to do a lot of really fun things, so it did all work out for us. So if you're kind of someone who wants to just kind of spend the day however you feel like it when you wake up, which is kind of our mindset on vacation, that's kind of what we did. We stayed at the Soller Plaza Hotel, which is right in the center of town. Our room had a great view of the church. We booked this through Airbnb. I'm sure you can find it on a lot of different websites. It was a really nice hotel. It was probably the nicest that we stayed in. It had a great concierge and it is a smaller boutique feeling hotel, which I really like. So first I'm going to tell you guys about some of the restaurants that we went to. There were a few that we didn't love, so I'm not going to talk about those ones. Here are the restaurants that we went to. All of them we either showed up earlier in the evening and put our name in, or just showed up, sat us right away. Here are the spots that I would recommend. The first night in Soller, we didn't arrive until after 8 o'clock, and so we just were kind of walking around the town and we stumbled upon this restaurant called Pinso. I'm not sure how to say it. I'm not going to be able to pronounce most of these things, so I will put the name and links and everything so you guys can find them. This one was a little bit of a hidden restaurant, but there were a ton of people sitting outside. It looked really good and kind of fancy, so we were able to get seated inside. I would probably recommend, if you do have more time, to do a reservation. It did seem like we kind of got lucky to just be able to be seated night of. I loved this restaurant. It was super fun. It's a lot of tapas. I think we ordered 4 or 5 different things and they were all so good. We went to 2 restaurants in Soller. They were kind of similar experiences with the tapas thing. We went to some other restaurants that are in the main town square, and those definitely felt way more touristy and a little bit less of a dining experience. So I do think that if you want a more fun experience in Soller, you should do some research on some restaurants that are not right in the main little plaza. The following day, we were on our way to Dea, where we wanted to see the sunset, but we just stumbled into another popular mountain town called Valdemosa, and we just decided we need to stay and have dinner here. It was so gorgeous. And we were walking around and we saw this one restaurant which we could just tell it had a really nice view. It was actually a hotel and restaurant. At the time we showed up, there was nobody there, which I was kind of I wasn't sure whether it was going to be good or not, but I think it's just because so many people in Europe eat so much later than us that even at 7:30, 8 o'clock, it was empty, but then by the time we were actually eating, there was a ton of people there. This restaurant was called Can Utem. This was a really cool experience where we had a really cool view where we could kind of see over the valley, and then there's a grill outside and the chef is grilling it out there, so you're able to kind of watch him cook your food, and it was just delicious. If you love meat, this was one of the best places that we went. I ordered, I think it's called Iberico pork, and I thought it was steak. It was so tender and juicy, and if you've eaten pork, it's normally a little drier and stuff. And then David got picanha steak, which I think is more of a Brazilian cut of meat, but that was so good. If you are a meat and potatoes and vegetable kind of person, I'd highly recommend going there. Now I know there's a ton of really cool restaurants in the Palma area, but we didn't really spend much time in Palma. We did go to a cafe there, which was called La Molienda. It was fully like vegetarian and vegan, but they also had some gluten-free options. So if you do have some dietary restrictions, this was a cool cafe to check out. Another breakfast spot we went to was a spot in Daya. In Daya, we had wanted to have dinner there, but our concierge did try to schedule a dinner for us, but she wasn't able to make one for us, so we just decided to go for breakfast just to experience Daya. So that is a place for sure if you want to eat dinner in Daya. I think you do need to make a few days at least in advance a reservation for dinner. But we went for breakfast at a place called Cafe Restaurant Espunte. This was really cute. This was the one day that the weather was not great and we got caught in this rainstorm, so we were sitting at the cafe and then all of a sudden it just started pouring. Everyone in the restaurant was getting soaked, but it was a really fun experience and it was a really good breakfast too. It was just a bit hectic. The last restaurant I want to talk about is another one in Soller and it's called La Romaguera. This one is another one that's a little bit away from the main area. We just stumbled upon it when we were walking back from where we parked our car and it looked super crowded, and I think it was about 6 o'clock and they couldn't get us in until like 9:30, but we were able to have dinner there. This felt like a more fine dining experience with the tapas, and we got to try a bunch of different foods, and most of the stuff that comes out is you get like a few bites of it, but it was kind of similar to the first restaurant in Soller that I mentioned. It's fun because you're able to try a bunch of different stuff that we normally wouldn't really order. Next, I want to talk about the beaches. So this was the part that I was really looking for advice on when I was watching other videos and TikToks and everything, because I was trying to figure out where all the really good beaches were. Everyone was saying online to stay in Soller or Daya or Valdemosa, but then it did seem that most of the beaches aren't really over there on the west coast. So while I did love staying in the mountain towns, I do think that if you have kids or if you don't want to be driving to the beach, you shouldn't necessarily stay in that area, because it is kind of like a day trip every time you want to go to the water, which we don't mind driving and it was fun for us and we loved being in the little town. I kind of wish that we could have had 2 different vacations where we were staying in the mountain towns and like solely exploring those areas. There are also like small little ports down there. I would have loved to then also spent a few days more on the east side and the south where there's some really gorgeous beaches, which is where we'd kind of mostly spend the daytime. The first beach that we went to is called Cala Ferreira and Cala Serena. Cala Serena, I think, is a beach that might be just exclusively for a resort, but when you're at the other beach, you can easily kind of just swim around and get to that beach. So we spent time at both of them. This is kind of one of the typical Mallorcan looking beaches. They're kind of just little coves. At Cala Ferreira, there are lounge chairs that you can pay for and umbrellas, but we ended up just walking along the sides and we're able to get to this rocky little like point, and we're able to put all of our stuff in our towels there, and we kind of hung out there. And then we also were swimming across to Cala Serena Beach, and that had, I think, like the hotel's lounge chairs out there, but we just climbed up and we hung out in the lounge chairs. That's a pro tip, I guess, if you don't want to spend the money. And honestly, it's a lot prettier out there. I did find that most of the beaches in Mallorca, especially the crowded ones, when you're actually on the beach area, it's not as nice. You got to go a little bit further out, which luckily a lot of them are little coves, and you can walk around on the rocks and stuff and get like the really gorgeous blue water. There's kind of like a lot of seaweed and like just like gross stuff near the shore. There's also some small cliffs to jump off of, which is fun. Then later in the day, we wanted to go to 2 of the most famous beaches in Mallorca, which are Cala Salmunia and Calo de Moro, which you have to park about at least half a mile away and then walk. And then there are some really steep steps to both of the beaches. The first one we went to was Cala Salmunia. I was not a huge fan of this one. It was hard to walk down. When I was reading people saying like, oh, it's difficult to walk down, I was kind of picturing like, okay, it might be difficult for someone who's older. I felt like it was much harder than I was expecting, or just like made me more nervous. The actual beach, I think, was just rocks, and there were like a good amount of people. But you also would want water shoes if you were wanting to swim over here. But if you get into the water, there's a ton of rocks and there's some pretty strong tides, so I didn't feel comfortable getting very deep in the water there. There was an area that you could walk to the side, and there was like a cliff that lots of people were jumping off of. Unless you're a strong swimmer, I wouldn't get in the water. Especially there are no lifeguards or anything there, so you just definitely want to be like aware. Then the other famous beach, which is probably the most famous beach in Mallorca, the most photographed, Calo de Moro. I had watched a ton of videos and was warned that this beach was going to be so crowded, which it is, totally packed. Hard to even find a place to put your stuff down, but it is a gorgeous beach. The water is gorgeous, the sand's very nice. Again though, this walk down, you kind of have to walk down these sandy steps, and I was almost kind of scooting down because I was nervous about falling. It's pretty steep. Also, because it is so crowded, I did read stuff that you want to get there very, very early if you don't want to run into the crowds. But maybe this is just my hot take, and maybe just because it was so crowded, it doesn't have like the same vibe, or it kind of maybe ruins the vibe a little bit. But I would say both of those beaches, I feel like if I went back to Mallorca, I do not need to go visit them again. Then the last beach that we went to was actually that we went to because we had rented a boat. I'm not sure what the access is like if you like drive and walk. There were a lot of people there, so I don't think this is one of the remote areas. But I'll talk to you guys a little bit about our boat experience. So we did one of those like rent a boat without a license, and again, we had not booked this in advance. We actually kind of decided to do it on that day last minute. We went into Palma, which there were like a lot of boat places. We were really struggling to find a place. I was looking on Google Maps. I found one place that I was like, okay, this will be our last ditch effort to see if we're gonna do this. The place was called Boat Charter Can Pastilla, which we showed up day of and were able to get a boat. They said it was like their last boat, or that somebody didn't show up, so I do think it's probably better to make a reservation. From the harbor where we took our boat, it was probably over an hour and a half to get to the beach that we went to. There were some other beaches along the way, and there was a lot of time on the boat where we were just kind of going, and it was just rocky cliffs and no beach or anything, which was really pretty, so it was a cool experience. Got to Calapai. There were probably like 8 other boats docked there, so it was kind of the perfect experience of we were kind of all out there, everyone was swimming around there. And then at one point we did swim to the shore, and the shore definitely had a different vibe. It was dirtier, murkier water. There were a lot of people there, really crowded, so we loved our boat experience and being there. I don't know how much I would love being at the beach there. Overall, I had seen some recommendations that if you are going to rent a boat, that there are better areas to take it out of, because it did take us so long to drive our boat to that one beach. And also we had the boat for about 5 hours, that you probably do want to do at least 8 hours, but honestly even more could be better, just so you can get to the remote area. Our main reason for wanting to rent the boat was I had watched a lot of YouTube videos where people were talking about how they're able to get to remote beaches that are really hard to get to by car and walking, and so I don't feel like we got that full experience. And I think if we were to go again, I would want to do a little bit more research and try to get a boat from an area that's closer to beaches, or just have like a better route in mind. David says that was his favorite day of the entire trip, so it was still a really cool experience. We both loved it. Overall, Mallorca turned out to be one of both of our favorite places that we've ever visited. There's so much that we didn't get to do, and I had seen so many people say you could spend weeks there. Let me know if you guys have any other questions. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.